This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
What?
We got this.
Are you going to open the show or
the
what?
The station owner's husband, she's still trying to train him. I mean, I asked her today how successful she's been, and she says it's definitely a work in progress. So, Greg, I don't want you to feel
surprised she said that.
Yeah, well, that was, you know how she is. You know what it is? She will look you straight in the eye when you're a customer and lie to you. But anybody else, she'd tell the truth and say you're worth 2 dead flies.
And at the moment, it's just Joe and me. This is an informational show.
We're informationing people.
What's informational in this
Informationaling.
show? There hasn't been any information in this show in 15
years. We're going to try to
years.
be today, aren't we?
340-1590, 340-1590.
Good start, Joe.
I am Joe Martek.
Yes.
Alan Love, special guest member, ex-prosecuting, I guess it's better to say retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, is our special guest member. And none other members of the team are here, now, which is Dan's probably in the hospital having the prostate rehung.
And we're praying for a very successful surgery.
Well, it's probably done. He's probably in recovery by now, isn't he? Or do you know? I forget when he said he was going to do it, but it was not. You know, he told us last week, and I forgot about it immediately.
Well, it's your age, Joe.
It's my age. Well, when you roto-root, this is not a big deal. I mean, to me, if it's getting it done, it's a very big deal. But when the rest of us, hey, I still can't figure out why in the world. Well, I know why he did it, because his wife said you have to do it. Old Greg understands that. Yep.
I get it.
Carol says, Greg, you're producing the program. And he says, but I don't know how to do it. She says, tough.
Well, besides the two of us here today, there are 4 other team members on Team Martek, right?
Which means Miss Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, the hardest working realtor ever born, probably the hardest working person that I've ever known. She's only got 2 speeds, full blast or sleeping. This girl, if she says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning, don't go to sleep, because she'll do it. And actually, she's been in Europe calling me and wasn't paying attention to the clock. And I think it was 3 in the morning here. But you know how that happens once you're someplace else. For a few days, you forget the time change. Hardest working person, rated one of the top 100 Remax agents in the world. Hard worker, knows her stuff, won't lie to you. I mean, she's just as good as they come. And
never shows up here.
Well, normally she calls and says, is there a show today? I'm on my way. That means half the time she'll show, because on the way here, a client will call, a customer of hers, and sidetrack her, which that's just been the way she's been her whole life. Which leads me to Mike Paulus, which is a mortgage broker who works hand in glove with Victoria. And in fact, I had a phone call from not a client, but people that I've been helping now for a long, long time. And
you help people?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, Greg, that every once in a while, just what happened. These people are at the bottom end of the totem pole when it comes to income. They've had nothing but trouble, but they had an accident, and they're getting a settlement, and life is coming together. So I've been counseling them and walking them through it. But in the meantime, somehow or other, they found a company, and I don't know how they found it, to run a credit report to try to help them. And it might be one of those companies that you pay that supposedly is going to clean you up,
Yeah, it's sort of scamish.
Sort of scamish.
Sort of.
Sort of, right.
Yeah,
so I said, stop right now, call Mike Paulus, say Joe Martek said you have to run a credit report, and he'll run it through the legitimate credit agencies. And I should have said, by the way, you can get a free one, because that's the law, that you're allowed one free credit report a year. But I forgot all about that. I just figured I'd let Mike handle it and try to counsel them
Right.
without charging them.
And you're allowed one free one from each of the three
Major credit bureaus, right.
Well, there are 4. The Nigerian credit.
The Nigerian one. The Nigerian one, you have to send them money, and trust me.
And if you really want to do that right, you spread it out every 4 months. You get a credit report.
See how
from,
smart this old guy is?
each of the 3.
Yeah, which is a good
so
idea.
you can do that?
Oh yes, you don't have to get all 3 at once.
Interesting.
Ne-
Okay.
See what you learned?
I never thought about that.
You know, I want a rebate. 340-1590, 340-1590, which then leads me to the other 2 originals going back to 2004 when we started doing the radio shows, were Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, who we've been talking about now, who's probably in the hospital having Roto-Rooter done. And
we
Dan
have the empty chair for him.
Yep. Dan is, in my not too humble opinion, the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast, pushing 40 years in business, over 100 companies under his umbrella. And what's interesting about an independent rather than a captive has one main company they work for, and they're not allowed to put business with anybody else unless their company doesn't write it. And then whenever they try to contact a company to say, hey, I need you to give me a quote on something for a client, they'll say, oh, you're a captive agent. We don't like you. You're only going to give us leftovers. So it's not necessary, in my, again, not too humble opinion, and I was a farmer's insurance agent up years ago, good company, but I learned quickly that in order to service my clients, to handle them, I had to be independent. So Dan is, well, to put it mildly, superb. If one company falls out of favor, which does happen from time to time. Who was it? Was it last week somebody on the other show? Oh, yeah, Pastor Jonathan. I think State Farm was non-renewing him or told him to leave because they think he's accident-prone or something, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which does happen. Well, you got to call Dan. I mean, you know, the bottom line is if you keep getting run over all the time, companies don't like you.
Well, that's true, but Dan has so many companies available that he can fit you into a slot almost 99% of the time, I would estimate.
Well, I think it might be 100% because when all else fails, there are the high risk, extreme high risk, non-regulated, non-admitted companies that will.
Joe's Insurance.
Joe's Insurance, right? Well, it's like Dan's people say, Joe, please, don't have any more tickets, please.
Well, Joe, we're conservative here, so I use the conservative number 99%.
I know. You said, didn't you say 0.9 though? 99.9?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you figured there might be one person out there that he couldn't handle it.
Our lawyers would love that.
Our lawyers would love that, right? Which leads me to Greg Fasula, attorney, and as soon as we say the word attorney, most people, the hair on the back of their neck stands up and their hands, they start holding onto their wallet. I mean, it's just not necessarily Alan, when you were a young man 140 years ago, the word attorney was a very honorable word. In credibility, I mean, I know some local attorneys in Stewart that have, multi-years in business and that said, things have changed. There was a day when they were in court and the opposing attorney, they would shake hands and they would agree to something and you could depend on them not lying. He said those days are gone, which is kind of sad, but you've watched it as a prosecuting attorney, and it's a very sad thing. So Greg Fasula, attorney, I tell you honestly, he's the only attorney I know personally I'd like to have as a next-door neighbor. He's just a flat good person. He's a good heart. He's a giver. He's not a taker. He's not pretentious. He's not arrogant. He doesn't drive the Rolls Royce. He's helps people, and I mean he helps people. He goes out of his way to help people, which I think is part of one of the trademarks of our show over the years. We're all big believers in what goes around comes around, well, except when it comes to producers of radio shows. We don't pay attention to them, but everybody else we do. So the concept is if you do the right thing for people, it's going to come back for you, right?
That's correct. And it's a shame what's happened to the legal profession. And I think one of the things that changed that was when attorneys were allowed to advertise.
Yeah.
You didn't see that before
There was none,
attorneys
right.
were allowed to advertise, and now it's just basically who has the slickest commercial.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the slickest commercial leads you to an unslick attorney.
I love this concept. There's a few attorneys that constantly are saying we are not a referral service, because there's attorneys that advertise like crazy and they get cases, but they don't do any cases. They then give them to another attorney, and the excuse is, well, listen, we want to do this, but we are so busy right now we wouldn't be doing the right job, so we're going to refer you to somebody that's going to do a good job because they are more available. Well, that's not always 100% a kosher statement.
No, it's an attorney being getting a finder's fee, basically.
Exactly. And if you do enough of that, what a great job.
And there's a couple in Stewart that's all they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not abnormal. Unfortunately, the person that's going to see them or think they're never told that. I have never seen an attorney say we are a referral service only. If I'm not mistaken, you don't even have to be licensed as an attorney. Do you have to be licensed to receive a referral fee?
In Wisconsin, you did not. I don't know about Florida.
It's just an interesting little piece of.
You hear a lot of those ads coming out of South Florida.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, there is one very large Miami
Yes.
law firm that does say that they also do referrals.
Do they really?
Yeah,
You've seen a commercial?
I was a little surprised. Yeah.
Wow. Was it in Spanish?
No, it was in the Miami Heat.
Miami. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep. 340-1590, 340-1590. So the concept of our group, very simply, we have over about 200 years worth of combined experience that we're willing to share with people, love to share with people, love to have people call in. What we rarely talk about is politics on this program, right, Alan?
I don't agree with that, Joe.
I know. I just wanted to see if he was an honest attorney, because rarely is a subject that if Dan was here, he and I seem to have a very good time defending our president. And if poor Greg was here, we feel sorry for Greg, because Greg, quote, is a moderate, right?
Well, I'll say this. A lot of my Democratic friends are beginning to change their tune in the sense of saying that this is getting ridiculous in this country, and what we need is leadership that's going to go back and work for the people.
Yeah.
And both parties are not doing that at the moment.
You know, it was very interesting. Late yesterday afternoon, Tom Sullivan had it on the air on this station that Trump had gone to both North and South Korea, called them,
Right.
for our farmers in the Midwest. So he's redirecting some of the stuff that was going to China to South and North Korea and Vietnam, and I think there was one other nation. That story never made nightly news last night.
Don't you love it?
I was thinking, that's really interesting.
And if a Dem had done that, they'd have put him on a shrine.
Genius.
Yeah. Well, the situation is, and the guy is just looking better every day. Now, of course, he's got to step on his foot almost every other day with an exaggeration
Stupid
or
tweets.
whatever. He does. But you know what he did say, which I loved, which he always toots his own horn, but this time he tooted it perfectly. He said, my administration is the most transparent administration ever. Because when you're the president and every single day you're saying something, that's, this never happened before.
That's so true, Joe.
Well, not since Lincoln, but nobody recorded him.
At least didn't go to the theater with him.
Well, that's it. And by the way, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? 340-1590, 340. So speaking of which, I'm online. I'm dating online. And my thing, I put.
Wait a minute, back up.
You didn't know that?
What a transition. You're
Well,
doing what?
That was the greatest segue I've heard in years.
It's not,
Oh
but it's
my
not done
God.
yet. So I'm on there. And
Oh.
one of my things is I do love going to New York about once a year and hitting some plays. And my very favorite play in the whole world is Phantom of the Opera. So this girl emails me back and she said, "What about taking me to Hamilton?" And I thought, well, it's like $700 seats. Unless you get behind a pole up in the back mezzanine, and then you're like $250 or $300. So anyway, I just said I'll give her a down payment. I'll send her a check for $5, and she can save money for a ticket. But 340-15.
Wait a minute, this is an online date?
Huh? Yeah. Well,
So
yeah.
you're going to take her out and
No.
you're not going to take her out.
Well, maybe, but not quickly. I mean, listen, if I take a girl up to see Hamilton, we have known each other for a long time.
In your case, Joe,
2
3 weeks.
3 weeks. 340-1590, 340-1590.
Are you going to bring any of your ex-wives in here?
It's an interesting thing. I've got probably none that would show. Can you imagine that?
Gee, why am I surprised?
Last time
Guy next to you is blushing real bad right now.
and he doesn't even look like an ex-wife.
Thank you very much. And we are on camera, so that
Poor
makes it
Alan.
even better.
Poor
Hey,
Alan.
anybody that want to watch this show live, you can. We stream live, but better than that, tomorrow we'll be on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it will.
So, I mean, and no
tomorrow
commercial.
Tomorrow night it'll be on.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It takes a whole night.
Yeah, well, Cliff, has got to do a little tweaking with it and
Is that how it works?
put your names and all the other stuff. Oh yeah, it's TV stuff.
What do I know?
Yeah.
You mentioned a few minutes ago Phantom of the Opera, and I've got to mention that too because of the fact that one of my favorite stations that is now 24/7 on the internet is called Classic Art Showcase.
Okay.
And they show little snippets of all sorts of art to try and get people interested in the arts. And two philanthropists who are now with the Lord many years ago donated enough money to keep the satellite going into perpetuity. And what happens is I thought Phantom of the Opera was a recent play and the music by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So I switched on Classic Arts, and what did I see? A silent movie of the unmasking scene from 1925 with Lon Chaney.
Yes, sir. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, goes all the way back to the 20s.
Well, you are really old. I didn't know you were born in 25.
Mike is on the line.
Mike is on the line. Anyway, we got a caller. Let's talk to Mike. Hey, Mike, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Good morning. First, I want to say how enjoyable it is for the rare times that Mr. Greg Wyatt's on. What a great air personality and voice. Always enjoyable. Thank you.
Now, who is you're talking about? Our producer's husband?
Yes. Thank you so much. It's
Hey,
always special.
You're missing it. He's complimenting you, Greg.
What I'm calling about, I'm starting to hear the word inflation. I wonder this morning, could you all enlighten us about it? What is it? What does it do? And what becomes of it? I'd like to listen off air if I could.
Hey, Mike, thanks for calling in. We love you, my man. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. First of all, the Fed wants their main thing is a 2% annual inflation rate. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what that means is prices go up on everything except what we use. No.
Is that like an extra buck on milk and stuff like that?
I'm telling you what, they don't use food and energy to gauge what inflation is, which is the two most that everybody has to use, but we eliminate those. And there's some logic behind it because some foods can be seasonal, some can be to do with storms or natural disasters or whatever. But the whole concept is this. If we go back to the Carter years, when inflation was running 10 to 15%, the Federal Reserve came and raised interest rates all the way up astronomically high to slow the economy down, absolutely to put people out of work, to get them to quit spending money. Now, sounds sacrilegious, but that's exactly what it did. Greg, and you lived through it, and I lived through it, and we were not happy campers back in 1982.
Let's see, what was the house loan? I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of 18 or 19%.
That's correct, 18.
Oh,
We
God.
actually, back then I was in real estate, and we had a project that we were doing that we were paying 4 over prime. And the state of Florida, or it might be a federal reg, I forget, had a usury law that said if it went to 24% was too high, and that's where we were. So they had to give us some money back. But anyway, it was just an interesting piece of phenomenon that inflation, what it does. Now, how they put this magic wand over the top of thing, if there's no inflation at all whatsoever, they get worried about that because prices are going down. That's causing another problem, which I've never figured out why that's a problem, but supposedly it is. But when prices go up too fast, what happens is people are spending money, but everything in the world goes up with them. And in truth, I have never seen what really went wrong about inflation with the exception of your job. Like if you own a house and you bought your house for $100,000 and inflation is 10-15% a year, and all of a sudden you're worth $200,000 or $300,000 and you sell your house, you're a happy camper because not many of us ever end up with $100,000 or $200,000 sitting in the bank from a sale of a house. So, in fact, I sold my house in Sewell's Point just before Francis and Jean, the 2 hurricanes, for an obscene amount of money, just by luck. So I have not heard, have you, Alan, about anything that looks inflationary?
Not really at this point.
I think Mike must have been listening or watching something that I have not seen because literally it seems to be hovering right at this 2% or a hair below that number. So the Fed, the reports that I've heard, are very happy with the way it is because, you know, Trump wants them to lower interest rates to keep stimulating the economy, which I'm having a hard time personally buying because we're running this magnificent economy right now to stimulate it more at this point. I mean, everybody I know is working that wants to work, and then there are 7 million jobs available in America. They can't find people to fill them.
Well, you can say that, but
You wonder, yeah.
you have to wonder. It's there was a story on our old TV station in San Diego yesterday. 250,000 millennials are leaving San Diego because they can't afford to live there.
Well, no kidding.
Well, I mean, you know, that something's wrong there. You know, I mean,
it's called California.
well, yeah, I know.
Listen, my broker-dealer's in California, and I talked to the only 2 conservative people in Anaheim that are there. And I said, you know, you got to make $250,000 a year to exist just about out there. And you know, these are not happy campers. And I said, no. He said, we're already at $5 a gallon for gas. He said, you know, it's pathetic. And now they want to raise it more. And I think is that San Francisco and I think now Illinois wants to tax electric cars.
Illinois, $1,000 a year.
Yeah, because they're not producing road tax out of gasoline sales. So you get to save. Basically, I was talking to a buddy of mine that has a Tesla. He figured that if it was gasoline he was buying rather than electricity, he's paying about 75 cents a gallon. You know, converting the amount of electricity to miles to converting that to gasoline.
Now, the question is, with the price of that car, does that work out?
Well, the only way you'll ever know is when you sell it. You understand what I'm saying? Let's say you buy a car today for $50,000 and you sell it next year for $45,000 and you put no gas in it.
Or less.
Or less. You would definitely be less. But I'm trying to say there's an equation between start and stop and cost to maintain and cost to use. Which car has been the best forever? Was it Honda? Honda's probably got the best reputation in the world for longevity and for resale value. Some cars I wouldn't have again ever that I've had that cost way too much, and then they maintained like crazy.
You know, a friend of ours who's down in Stewart at C&W Communications, he has had an electric Ford since day one.
Uh-huh.
And he keeps the book. I mean, he's really good at keeping the book. And he has saved, as he says, the price of the car maybe 4 or 5 times over.
over what it should be?
No. It just he's probably saved $30,000-$40,000.
Wow, in
gas.
fuel costs.
Yeah,
Well, he's
yeah.
driving a lot, and he doesn't drive far.
No, he drives it up to Georgia about 7 or 8 times a year.
He can make it to Georgia.
Oh yeah.
But that is like a
A
300.
few stops. I mean, you recharge.
You can plug in.
Yeah. You look at St. Lucie West now, and there's that one area by Walmart that must have a dozen charging stations.
Do they charge you for those?
That's a good question. I've never stopped at one to see.
And they can't do this stuff for free because electricity still costs money.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't. That's a very good question. I don't know.
Now one of us is going to have to drive
I'm
out
gonna
there,
stop.
and
I'll
I vote
stop.
for you.
I'll stop by on my way home.
Unless it's a marketing tool where while you're waiting for the car
Could be
to charge,
Walmart.
you go into the store.
Yeah.
What a competitive business. This is between Amazon and Walmart and what they're all trying to do to keep and maintain or grow market share. Today, the retail news was negative except for Macy's, which seemed to have done a pretty good job, but all the rest of retail that was reporting is down considerably. But of course, Amazon is cranking. What's the one that's Chinese? What's the name of that big one?
Oh yeah, the Amazon rival.
The Alibaba you're talking about?
Yes, Alibaba. Yeah,
They're
yeah.
up phenomenally from last year. Just phenomenally. Just unbelievably.
Did you see that weird thing? The story on CNBC with Party City, that they're going to close like 60 to 80 stores because of a helium shortage. And now Fox Business yesterday followed that with the military is starting to scream because of this worldwide helium shortage, because they use it in submarines and all the other stuff.
Now, let me ask you a question. I had no idea how helium is made. Do you?
No.
I just, to me it's like stuff.
Divers use it.
Yeah, they do?
Yeah.
Nitrogen with divers.
I think it's helium.
I think it's nitrogen.
Because divers were the guys who were on television talking about how their businesses
really
suffering.
Well,
yeah.
hey, listen.
I thought helium was just a natural element that was.
It may be, but
out
somehow or other they
there.
got to bottle it, right?
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. So we've talked about lots of useless stuff so far.
Well, Mike, when he called, he was talking about the Fed. And what a lot of people don't understand is the Fed really is non-political. They have
Supposed to be independent.
They're supposed to be independent with only 2 missions. One mission is to keep inflation under control. The other mission is to have the economy running close to full employment.
Don't we have a Department of Treasury for that? Why does the Fed even exist?
However, isn't the Department of Treasury more political?
Shouldn't be.
Well, what, did you say shouldn't?
Well,
be?
it shouldn't be.
I mean, where have you been, boy?
Well, the Fed.
Who is the Secretary of the Treasury right now?
Mnuchin.
Oh, who was he appointed by?
Trump.
Oh, Lord save me. You think there might be
Who?
Yeah, right. All I'm trying to say is, with the Fed, even though Trump appointed the head of the Fed, in theory, supposed to be an independent, but he can be fired by the president also, can he not?
Yeah.
Oh,
But-
yeah.
But the Treasury has many more things to do, like the currency, making sure that there's no laundering of money.
Last time I laundered money, it got cleaner.
Well, that is really a sick joke, Joe.
Sick joke?
Do you want to take
So
that
that
one
happened
back?
2
Take
weeks
that one
ago.
back.
As a matter of
Take that one
fact.
2 weeks ago. And when you find that clean $10 bill
Yeah,
in
I
your pocket,
know,
it's a nice thrill. The key thing, Mike, when we're talking about inflation is the government feels that too much inflation is a bad thing and not enough inflation is a bad thing. And they're trying to control the economy the best they can to keep people working and yet keep interest rates affordable, because let's go back to when interest rates were at 15 and 18% buying a house. Most people could not afford, could not qualify. Now, interest rates are low. The people that are really upset about interest rates being low are those that have savings in the bank because the bank's paying 1 or 2%. But if you can get a house mortgage in the 4 to 5% range, I mean, back when I was in real estate, I would have bet you $1 million to a donut it would never get back below 10%. We used to think 10% would be a gift. However, it's been hovering 3, 4, 5% now for a number of years, and it seems to be working extremely well. So, and I'm kind of baffled because normally when you have full employment, inflation starts to really rear its ugly head because jobs, it was Bill Clinton that said this, and Greg, you'll forgive me because I know you're from California and you love Bill Clinton, and so do I. I was just waiting for a comment there. But he was on TV.
Economy did very well under Bill Clinton.
Very well, did magnificently. And, I don't care who's wants to
he
take
just
credit.
couldn't control his zipper, that's all.
Well, a little minor thing. But what happened is pun intended. What's Peroni's? Who cares? Anyway.
The deterioration of this show is astounding.
We have an attorney here trying to keep us straight, and he's not doing a very good job. But what he did say, they were interviewing him about his charity and what all the money they were doing and giving, and they did ask a question about the inequality in wages between the top and the bottom. And his quote was very simple, and there was no publicity whatsoever about this, none, that this will take care of itself. And they said, well, how can that happen? He said, when full employment comes, the people at the bottom of the spectrum start getting raises. The people at the top start losing because they have to equalize and because they can't afford to lose employees. So the bottom, and look at what's happened. I mean, all of a sudden, $10 an hour is nothing anymore. $15 an hour, many states are saying a minimum wage. It's becoming a major impact. Also,
New York's talking about 25.
Why
as
not?
A minimum.
Well, you were, who was it? Were you saying that barbacks or somebody was saying barbacks get $25 an hour? I mean, it's the system cures itself when it has full employment, which we are at, quote, full employment now. So people in the bottom of the spectrum are doing better and better. And then there's headhunters out like crazy now again, trying to chase people away from one company to go to another one. And the best way to do that is with money. I have a nephew that just moved to, of all the places in the world, Seattle. Big raise. Of course, it costs more to live in Seattle. But that he and his wife don't mind cold weather. They like to hike in the mountains, and they live right downtown. He can walk to work. They don't need a car. All of a sudden, starts to become...
and not having a car in Seattle is like not having a car in San Francisco. It's great.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, Alan, inflation can be a problem. Deflation can be a problem. Keeping it in the middle where the Fed wants it, it appears to make the economy hum, which it's humming right now. And we don't want to say that it's all because of the Fed or all because of any one entity, but the whole picture, when all of these elements get thrown into the basket and it works, is where we are right now.
Well, the important thing with the Fed is they have a really tough job to be able to sort of gauge where the economy is going in advance and keep things on track. And back in 1929, what started the Great Depression was the Fed thought that the economy was going too well, and they over-tightened interest rates. Sure. They went way too far. And by 1931, we were at the bottom, and people were suffering in this country.
Big time. And this last recession was a whole different ballgame. But the bottom line is, our Federal Reserve is given the authority and the responsibility, in theory, to keep us on this even keel, and it's never happened. It's always been a roller coaster, and it probably will continue. We all hope it won't, but it probably will. Is there going to be another recession? You can almost bet 100 to 1 odds that there's going to be. When, nobody knows. I'm regularly asked, Joe, when do you think it'll happen? And I say, well, it's not going to happen in 19, and I would bet anything it's not going to happen in 20, which is an election year. And I think the whole...
Remember the doomsayers on CNBC saying
Lords.
2019, all hell's going to break loose? And
well, there's always the gloom and doom people. Always have been, always will be. And you know what it is, Greg? When you add all 1,000 things on the left and 1,000 things on the right, but you only read the 1,000 things on the left, you're a doomsgloom. If you only read the things on the right, you're an eternal optimist. Somewhere in the middle of there is somebody that can analyze this whole thing objectively. Can you imagine that word?
Oh, by the way, speaking of that, did you hear AOC the other night?
No.
She said she was only joking about the 12 years left on Earth.
Oh, she's a trip.
that she said that I just don't understand all these people that don't have a sense of humor.
What about our Muslim?
She sounded pretty.
Our Muslim congressman from Michigan.
Oh God! Don't even go there.
Isn't this a wild one? I mean, it's you know what it is? There's entertainment value out there because it's just hard to imagine some people actually get into office, and when they're in there, how they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. It makes it more interesting.
Well, if they have, especially Congress, a constituency in a small area.
Yeah.
Like Minneapolis has a lot of Muslims in that certain area.
Well, in Detroit,
same.
yeah, biggest outside. Yeah. Hey, 340-1590, 340-1590. We got anything else political we want to talk about here, Alan?
I don't, but if you have something or Greg.
I'm extremely happy. And by the way, have you not noticed that, of course, the Dems are unhappy with Trump, no doubt about it. But this tariff thing with Russia, there is more and more support for this constantly because he is the first guy that stepped up and said we've got to stop this illegal activity, this stealing of our information.
Infrastructure and everything else.
Everything. The concept.
Well, and the pipeline. He's starting to get into that with the German chancellor.
Yeah.
And she's starting to agree with him.
Yeah.
That she's paying usury rates for this stuff that's coming
from a communist country.
And that he has offered, a half a dozen ships from Long Beach will bring you the natural gas that you need.
The key thing
is... Big deal. That's a big deal.
And he's saying, hey, look it. We're going to put these tariffs in. Now, then there's defense against it saying, well, the consumer's going to pay more money. Well, no kidding. Whenever you have things that are imbalanced improperly, they're a great bargain. And those of us that have shopped at Walmart and buy everything from China, everything in there is cheap. However, today they were talking about Adidas or Adidas, depending on which country you're in.
It's Adidas.
And Nike. That almost 80% now of their shoes are not made in China. They're going to Vietnam and in some other countries. They're moving as fast as
Singapore.
They can. Out of China. Well, and the reality is this. It's a free world. It's a free society. If I can make my widgets cheaper across the street than on this side of the street, guess where I'm going to make my widgets?
And apparently, I was watching on Bloomberg where there are several major companies that are leaving China and moving to like Singapore or other countries in that area, Vietnam being another one. And hey, that's going to hurt the Chinese more than anything.
Everything in this world is competitive, no matter what you do. And when you finally quit subsidizing no matter what, and you have to stand on your own. If you subsidize forever, eventually you go broke. I mean, you just can't put $3 out with only $2 coming in. Sometime that house of cards is going to crumble. Anyway.
Joe, one of the things about a change in this country, World War II, people were buying war bonds to help support the war effort. They were working 15 hours a day to help build the things that the military needs. And now people are complaining about paying a few % more for an item that they want when it's actually going to help the country down the road, because when we win this tariff war, and I'm fully convinced that we will.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
When we win this tariff war, we are going to be in great shape, and it would not surprise me that if we do win it quickly, by the 2020 election or shortly thereafter, the Dow will be in the 30,000s rather than the 20,000.
The whole object of the stock market, when companies are making money, stocks go up.
And
Real
you
simple.
just mentioned Walmart in passing. You don't think the buyers of Walmart and other large retailers are looking at that whole Chinese tariff thing?
Monster.
And looking at other alternatives.
Monster. Hey, listen.
Maybe in Korea.
Walmart didn't get to be as big as they are by being stupid.
That's right.
They're going to make the best decision they can to sell the widgets back to the consumer
Sure,
to keep their market share.
You betcha.
340-1590, 340-1590. Hey, and we got a loose tongue guy on the radio. Bulldog, how you doing, my man?
Oh, careful with that, Joe. You're the one dating online.
Well, that's true. That's true. But
Sure is the guy?
luckily, you turned me down.
Check a driver's license, would you? I know you like them young, so.
Anyway, but you're cute, Bulldog, but you're not quite my type.
Yeah, not to mention she beats you to death.
A little minor side effect, right?
Hey, Alan, sorry I procrastinated, but I got back to you, all right?
Yes, that's fine, Bulldog. How are you feeling?
Well, Friday I got pre-op, and then Monday I have bi-op, and then we find out what the deal is.
So you don't know yet?
Oh, I don't know anything yet.
Of course. Why should you know something?
2 biopsies, and they can't figure anything out.
It's only your body. Well, you know the Dan story when he was in the hospital. He thought he had the flu, and Nancy, they came in and ran tests and said, we'll let you know next week. And she said, no, you won't. You're going to do it now. And Dan had sepsis. Sepsis he could have been dead in that week's time if she hadn't have pulled the Bulldog on the hospital Dan was in, which he's in, by the way, now getting roto-rooted.
Well, and thank God for Greg Fasula and his POA and healthcare surrogate.
Yep.
Because Mary Beth, being a nurse, pulled the trigger on this stuff because she said it's not minor.
Well, hey, listen, you got the right woman. You got lucky, my man.
Because Dan would have blown it off. I would have blown it off.
Yeah.
But, you got the right woman.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you hit it right on a nutshell. Other than that, how you doing up there with the Frozen Chosen?
Tell you what, man. But I am, with Alan's help, going to try to help other veterans. Because going through this process, I have to tell you, is an ordeal. It involves a lot of forms, a lot of phone calls, and a lot of, you got to call this person, do this, do this, do this.
We
got it all down.
You're an expert on the VA system by now. You've learned it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not so much into the benefits department, but when it comes to like the education and the health care, if I can help others, that's what I want to do.
Let me ask you, Bulldog, right? You've got an email address, right, that I can announce on the radio that people might be able to contact you?
I sent it, Robert Buys 1004 at Comcast.net.
And it's BUYS, right?
That is correct.
So repeat it again slowly.
Robert Buys, BUYS, 1004 at Comcast.net.
All right, my man. Hey, listen,
if
hang
you're
in.
a veteran, you need some help, give me a call.
There you go. Hey, Bulldog.
Or just,
email
send me
you.
an email, and we'll talk about it, and I'll see if I can point you.
Hey, Bulldog, have you checked with Congressman Brian Mast about the
Yes,
VA?
I did. He never returned.
Ooh.
Exciting, huh?
All right, Brian, I know you listen, so.
Yeah, that's it. You better pay attention.
Bulldog
is...
I did. I said, I have some questions about this that I don't think are right. For instance, I wanted to use, all right, I'll give you a big for instance, real quick. I'm under the Montgomery bill, which means that my GI educational benefits ran out 10 years after I got out of the service. Okay. Post 9/11, they have a forever bill. So I got 10 years of eligibility. But as you're coming out of the military, the first thing you're going to do is not go to college. You can't afford it. You know, you got to work several years. And by the time I got to my master's, I had to pay for it myself.
Yep.
And I want to go for my doctorate. I've still got 7 years that have expired because I didn't get a chance to use them. I don't think that's fair.
Pull the chain on Mass. He should be on your team.
Well, he should, and there's other things too. You know, with health care things and everything else.
Well, so, you're becoming an expert on this, my man, and so people will. Hey,
Hey, well, you know, I just try to help people because I was helped.
There you go.
And that's what it's all about, man. You got to give back.
Yep. Bulldog, we all agree with you. Thank you so much for being a loyal and hey, it's always been a treat knowing you and even Alan likes you.
Well, I'm not going to kick off anytime soon.
Then I don't have to be this nice to you then. Okay, never mind.
No, I want to find out who this online person is.
There you go.
I got to wait around for a little bit.
All right, my man. Have a good one.
You too, sir.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. I'm going to talk 5 minutes or so about business. Let me just say quickly that this is a normal subject for me. It happens all the time. There's a monster difference between annuity contracts depending on how you are perceived. Let me just give you this. Number one, an annuity contract is a contract with an insurance company, and why do I have it? Number one, money is tax deferred, meaning until I take money out, there's no taxes. When I do, it's ordinary income only, no other form of tax. If I die, when I die, it's not subject to probate. And last but not least, if I get sued, it can't be taken away from me. Now, there's two major kinds of annuities that I hear about constantly, and on the tube, you will see constant people touting seminars and doing all kinds of good stuff. These are not what's called federally regulated contracts. These are state license contracts. They're not part of the securities system because the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA, the regulatory agencies, will not allow those commercials if they are a security. So when you hear the word index or fixed index annuity, remember this: you're not in the market. No matter what they pretend to try to tell you, you are not in the market. You are a fixed index annuity subject to the bond market, and basically these things cannot pay. As an example, the S&P 500 2 years ago was up almost 20%. But if you've been in a fixed index annuity, there's no way in the world they can pay you the 20 because they only make 3 or 4%. So you just have to be very careful when you hear the words fixed index. Now, index S&P 500, you can be in that in a mutual fund, in an ETF, exchange-traded fund, or inside of a variable annuity. And literally 2 years ago, you would have been up roughly 20%. And you'd been invested in the market no matter what it is. That's what it was. This year, you'd be up around 10%, even with the market debacle this last week or so, which, in my not too humble opinion, is a very short-term thing because of this trade war. So education is the name of the game here. Anybody that has any questions, you call 340-1590. They'll give you our numbers for any member of the group. We're here to help people. We're here to help educate, whether it's done on the phone or whether you come to see me in the office or whether I come to see you or if you go see any other member of the group. All of us will talk to you on the phone and try to set you straight without charging you a nickel. And to make sure that you are going in the right direction. Because I know even my buddy Alan Love over here, he had heard these words, and nobody had educated him until he met Joe Martek 3 or 4 years ago.
That is correct. And, any question is a reasonable question. There's no such thing as a question that you shouldn't ask professionals.
Period.
Because good professionals will lead you in the right direction. Because if you're asking what you think is a silly question, It may be a silly question, but then you have an opportunity to get led in the right direction.
I want 20% no risk.
You've got it. No problem. It's called marriage. 340-1590.
Well, you must be the riskiest guy I ever met.
Well, I forgot to tell you, she has to have a regular job.
Is this your online date thing?
No, I'm talking about marriage.
Are you going to provide us with the Joe Martek 10 Commandments of Marriage next week?
Yeah,
Is that where we're going?
You ready? Number 1, don't. Number 2, don't. Number 3, don't. Yes, dear. Oh, yeah, the next 3 are yes, dear, in order to stay married. 340-1590. 340-1590. Remember the group. We've got Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, premier insurance agency on the Treasure Coast. You got Greg Fasula, attorney, probably the nicest attorney you'll ever meet in your entire life. You got Joe Martek, financial advisor. I'm not a bad guy either, in spite of the rumors, right, Alan? Correct. Ms. Victoria.
There are a lot of rumors.
I know there are. I usually start most of them myself. Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor born, period. Mr. Mike Paulus, mortgage broker. I will tell you what we have learned from Mike, and it's just, and everybody in our group will go out of their way to help you. And one of the things that happens with Mike, he will counsel people on how to correct their credit so they can get a house or get their credit straightened around, and how to work with the credit bureaus on their credit reporting. We're very blessed to have such a solid group of local professionals that have been around for a long, long time, and I hope to die here. Of course, not right today at the radio station, because it would ruin Greg's day, because me laying on the floor here dead, the police would come and say, Greg, why'd you kill him? And Greg would say, it was justified.
Just bring a check first.
Just bring a check first, right? And Alan?
I just want to say thank you, folks, for listening to such high-class radio. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys, we're almost out of time. I got the half glass full sign, which means we got 30 seconds, which is now down to 20, which if I keep talking, it'll be at 10, and then finally I'll get this cutthroat. Is that what's that cutthroat mean? Oh, we're gone until next week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.